Bichara Supply Chain, highlighting and showcasing solutions for the most complex challenges facing the industry in 21st century by our team of subject matter experts and mentors. Broadcasting every week, all year round, we will present the most up-to-date series of podcasts and webinars.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bichara Supply Chain. This is Nur Hadi House. We have a very special guest today, Ishan Galapathy. He is a mentor, speaker, and author in productivity improvement, which is primarily in the manufacturing sector. Ishan wrote a book called Hidden Growth Opportunities. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Bichara Supply Chain, Ishan.
Yes, thank you, Nur Hadi, and glad to be on the program.
All right. So in today's episode, we will be talking about the supply chain productivity. But before that, can you please brief a bit about yourself and your professional background?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a nutshell, Nur Hadi, I've got over 20 years of experience with multinational companies in manufacturing and improving productivity.
Yeah.
So qualifications-wise, I've got an engineering degree, an MBA, and I can impress the listeners by saying I've also got a Six Sigma Black Belt. When I look at my 20 years of experience, there's two primary roles. Either I've been in manufacturing management kind of roles, or I've been in process improvement kind of roles. And I've kind of liked the latter, which is the process improvement. My last corporate employer was Kellogg. I was looking after all of Asia Pacific factories to help them improve their productivity. I was kind of privileged to be part of their global team to develop their global supply chain excellence program. So I was able to lead continuous improvement globally with Kellogg. But in the last 5 years, I've been running my own consulting practice. I help manufacturing businesses to improve productivity and profitability. And most of them I see, Nur Hadi, they're growing the top line, but the bottom line profitability is actually declining or staying flat. And most of the business leaders are actually stuck in this day-to-day chaos. And I help them with implementing processes on how to juggle both the day-to-day activities and improving year on year. And the beauty is when I go back and talk to some of these businesses 12 months later, they tell me that they've grown the business like 15%, 20% in some cases without any additional resources. And that really makes me happy because that's what productivity improvement, that's what process improvement is all about. You mentioned my first book, Hidden Growth Opportunities, and I'm actually writing my second book titled Advance at the moment. And I'm married. I live in Sydney with my wife and two teenage boys.
Okay, cool. Okay, talking about the productivity, what is the productivity in the context of supply chain, and what would be the best way to increase the supply chain productivity?
Yeah, so it sounds complex. Because productivity, I mean, what do we improve? I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about improving processes. It's all about improving efficiency. It's all about reducing waste. And hopefully all of that will help to improve profitability. So most businesses are for profit. And even if you're not for profit, it's still all about how do you improve your efficiency. So what is productivity? It is actually from the lens that I look at the world. It is about engaging your employees to solve problems in a structured way.
All right.
I find leaders are quick to work on capital projects. So they do CapEx projects to improve productivity by buying machinery or equipment. But not a lot of focus is actually put on operational excellence. So it's the CapEx versus the OpEx. And there is a lot of wasted productivity, there's a lot of waste, and there are a lot of hidden opportunities. So going after these waste actually becomes an elusive mirage if you don't have systems and processes in place to first tackle your day-to-day chaos. And that's why I find a lot of business leaders actually getting sucked in to dealing with the day-to-day chaos, because that side of the business hasn't been systemized. Once that is systemized, then you work on your year-on-year improvements. So in an absolute nutshell, it's about tackling the day-to-day and improving the year-on-year. So happy to give you a couple of quick examples, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So from a day-to-day point of view, one of the businesses I was working with in the last 5 years, they were actually growing double digits. And their daily performance, however, was slipping. They didn't know what was happening on a daily basis. And from the moment all the managers and the leaders came to the business, they were really putting out spot fires. They would start a production run and, they would run out of raw material, or there's packaging that's short. The customer would increase the production quantities and they weren't able to deal with that. And they were really pulling their hair out from morning till night, just putting out spot fires. So we implemented these daily and shiftly huddle meeting systems to track progress and take appropriate actions. It sounds like a basic thing, and it is. But I'm surprised how many businesses I see who still don't have these fundamental supply chain world-class practices. And I think that is the biggest gap that, people try to do. Yeah, let's spend money, let's do all this, but they don't have the practices. Just by putting in that process, 12 months later, their number 3 client had become their number 1 client. They had actually grown by 40%, their client. And the company that I was working with turned out to be one of the most reliable suppliers to their number 1 client. So, and all because we managed to put in systems to handle the day-to-day, and they can be on top of it. So that's an example of how you take control of your day-to-day and keep the chaos to a minimum. From a year-on-year, because what that allows you to do is then let's find the biggest problems and solve them in a structured way that's going to give you growth, right? So I remember going back to my Kellogg days. One of the factories, I won't mention the country, but one of the factories actually had a big constraint in their supply chain. And what we did was pretty much we grabbed a cross-functional team, including some of their best operators, and we ran structured problem solving in how to improve productivity of the cornflakes line. And there was this really good operator that everybody knew, let's call him Sam. Sam was the best operator, but he didn't do anything more than what was being asked from him. However, through this process, we managed to engage Sam to the point that one day he actually went to the team leader and started sharing his thoughts and ideas. And he had basically told the team leader that no one in the business had asked for his opinion for the last 17 years. I mean, think about that. He didn't feel valued. He didn't feel engaged for his entire time. We didn't have systems on how to engage people. Like the team leader was nearly in tears when she came to see me saying, Ishan, Sam spoke with me. And these are little things. And we managed to turn around that cornflakes line to be one of the best production lines in Asia Pacific, even at the time I left in 2015. Now, I see that all the time. I've seen, businesses reduce two warehouses into one because we've been able to reduce their inventory levels, or because we managed to get the people on board and started slowly working with them. Managed to reduce warehouse space in another business, and they managed to increase sales as well. Why? Because before there wasn't a structured system to solve those big problems. So, so productivity can be this ambiguous, let's just improve anything and everything. But it's actually quite simple. You keep the day-to-day chaos to a minimum by systemizing some processes, and then you solve a few big problems at a time.
Yeah.
That's the simple formula.
Mm-hmm. I would like to get your opinion about the correlation of the technology and supply chain's productivity. So how does the technology help companies to improve their supply chain's productivity? Can you please elaborate by providing a few example?
Yeah, so I'm sure you and your listeners would be familiar with the term Industry 4, Industry 4.0.
4.0. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, congratulations. We are all making history because we are going through, apparently, the fourth industrial revolution, right? So, just to quickly go back, the first revolution happened in the late 17th century when we discovered steam. So we were able to improve productivity and reduce the cost. The cost of cotton fell by 50-60% through that era. The second revolution happened in the early 19th century with Henry Ford, kind of the mass assembly, when we basically came across electricity. So electricity gave birth to mass production and production lines and factories, again, improving productivity, reducing cost. The third industrial revolution, which most of us would be familiar with, kind of started with Hewlett-Packard and Intel, registering in 1969. So that kind of marks the timeline with the microprocessors and robotics, becoming available for improving industrial output and reducing cost. The fourth one, which started after the global financial crisis, it's basically saying, look, everything that's got an IP address, everything that can be connected, how do we now leverage everything that's come before us through the power of connectivity, right? Mm-hmm. And the promise is that it'll again improve productivity and reduce costs.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, I think business leaders attend a lot of seminars, conferences, business breakfasts. There's a lot of hype and a lot of information created about, we need to have the smart factories. We need to have, the Industry 4 technology. What's not clear, Mihadi, is when I talk to business leaders, they go back to their factories and they look at the promise that's being made, whereas this ubiquitous image of what Industry 4 factories need to look like, and then they compare to where they are today, and the gap is so significant, they really don't know what the next steps are. Do I turn left or do I turn right? That seems to be the issue that most people are struggling with. I mean, I'm not anti-technology. I mean, I studied mechatronics at University of New South Wales. We were the first batch. That's all about electronics, robotics, and automated manufacturing in 1998 when I came out of UNSW. So I love technology, but I think when it comes to supply chains, it needs to be introduced at the right time. It certainly cannot be a gap filler to some of the processes that you haven't taken the time to implement. For example, when I go to factories, I find, production managers, business owners taking me to their factory saying, "Hey, Ishan, come, I'll show you our latest Industry 4 project that we're working on." And they would show me a case packer that they have implemented. And sure enough, it's got, this graphical color screen that's able to provide instantaneous data on uptime, throughput rates and whatnot. But they think that is Industry 4. And when I tell them, you're becoming ready to be Industry 4, Industry 4 is not an out-of-the-box solution that you purchase and implement. It's a way of being. It's a long road ahead. So there are two things I want to highlight. One is it's not just a yes/no answer in terms of are you Industry 4 ready, or are you, technologically, can you tick that box off? I think it's a way of being. You got to improve everything around it to be ready to accept technology and go down that path. And the second thing is technology is not the solution, looking for a problem. So don't go implementing technology as the solution and then look for the problem as to what is it going to solve. Let me give you a quick case study that was conducted. Before we started the recording, we had a quick chat, Nahadi, about APEX and the Australian Supply Chain Institute. So the Australian Supply Chain Institute, known as ASCII, conducted an industry survey in the end of 2018. It was done bringing in a number of actual businesses and industries companies from various industry sectors. It was conducted by the University of Technology in Sydney, so UTS. And what they did was they looked at 12 subcategories, comparing 2018 versus 2019. And what they, I think I just got the years wrong. They compared 2017 versus 18, and the report came out early last year.
Yeah.
Let me just think that for a minute. No, I take that back. I was correct the first time. Compared 2018 versus 19, and the report was published late last year. But the important thing is this. In the 12 categories that they compared, 2018 versus 19, across these multiple sectors, multiple companies, what they found was the two sub-points that related to technology was off the chart. It was off the chart in terms of maturity and advancement. However, the overall maturity between 2018 and 19 has reduced by 6 percentage points from 52 to 46. So despite advancement in technology to off the record, off the charts, yet the entire supply chain maturity has come down from 2018 to 19. So this was conducted by the University of Technology in Sydney in collaboration with Australian Supply Chain Institute. The listeners will be able to download the report from the ASCII website, Australian Supply Chain website, and they only need to read the executive summary to get an understanding of what I've just mentioned. Yeah. So it's a scary picture, basically. So I think businesses are quite fond of technology. They're trying to implement technology as a solution, looking for a problem. But as I said before, I see a lot of fundamental processes that are lacking. And I don't think technology is going to solve those problems. In fact, it's only going to show how big that gap is. It's only going to widen the gap.
All right. So I actually received this question from many of our listeners, Ishan, is about the COVID-19 and also what is correlation with the supply chain's productivity. So in the recent date where the COVID-19 has impacted to supply chain globally, in terms of supply chain productivity, in which area we have to focus on?
Yeah, I think this has highlighted the importance of these fundamental processes. I mean, the only thing is we need to learn how to lead and manage remotely, because one thing that this has shown is that, you know, depending on which country you're in, they obviously have various regulations in terms of social distancing and what is accepted practice and what's not. But one thing for sure, people are quite concerned about coming close contact with each other. So what this has done to supply chain is this. Before 2020, a lot of businesses have put equipment, machines, technology as the key fundamental parts of growing a business, and you know, things that are critical, I guess. What's being shown now is that people have become more important, or become the critical part of supply chains. Why? Businesses are trying various business continuity plans. You know, how do you have multiple teams? So even if one team, a member of one team has got a positive ID, even if we contained that team, how does the business continue with the second team and the third team? So transferring of skills, multi-skilling teams, having these fundamental business processes that I spoke of to manage the day-to-day have become absolutely critical, because it's shown that they're important and people are important. So I think that's what COVID has shown, and the impact. And of course, at a micro level, if you're making hand sanitizer and face masks, yep, your demand's gone up. If you're making something that's no longer required, then your demand's gone down. That's at a micro level. But irrespective of that, but from a supply chain point of view, yeah, the importance of fundamental processes and the criticality of people is what's being highlighted.
Mm-hmm. All right. So before we close today's conversation, Ishan, what is your key takeaway from today's topic?
Yeah. So how do I summarize in 10, 15 seconds? Hey, I kept mentioning about the day-to-day and year on year.
Yeah.
So I think those two are the two fundamental areas or systems that a business needs to learn how to manage. So implement processes to reduce the day-to-day chaos and solve complex problems on a regular cadence to improve the year-on-year performance. What that means, I guess, is you're learning to run the business and you're also improving the business. And if I were to summarize that even further, I would say manage today and lead tomorrow. Manage today and lead tomorrow. I think that's as fundamental as it gets. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
At Bichara Supply Chain, we are committed to driving global perspective to embrace technological adaptation in improving process efficiencies. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share Bichara Supply Chain. And stay tuned for the latest updates. To learn more, visit our website www.bicharasupplychain.com. Thank you for listening to us. We look forward to seeing you at our next episode.